working to get text and images working together in harmony and telling a unified story. And I'm going to look in this slideshow at a number of strategies for that and break the problem down, I guess, into a couple parts. And I would say this first ad I'm showing you is uh, sort of very straightforward, but does a good job of having a lot of text, and you don't have to have anywhere near this much text, having it readable, and and it working in harmony with the picture. In other words, the picture is not making it hard to read the text is not distracting from the picture. They're working together harmoniously. Now, would they be type choices I would make? Probably not in this case, but they're working fine. And I should say that this photograph was almost certainly taken to be used this way. If you think about this photo, it's really kind of unnatural. There is this house that is humongous. It goes off the side of the page on both sides, and it giving us this kind of self-contained world where there's nothing but this sort of glorious mansion and these cars. And if you look at the cars themselves, you note that they are parked unnaturally close. Someone could not even have gotten out of the driver's side in the Hyundai. But it's done that to make this compact picture and to show the two cars together. And so, I mean, that is sort of the technical side of this problem, is getting them to work together. Let me skip to the next ad. Very kind of similar sort of thing, but I would say this one is typographically just a little bit better for its era. And as we get into the history project next, we'll talk about eras a bit more. But here we have this image of just this luxurious sundae. And, sundaes at Baskin Robbins don't actually come in glass bowls, but it's photographed in a glass bowl. And we just have all this lavishness and sumptuousness here. And here I would say the typeface, in this case it's a font called Gaudi Old Style. One of the ways you can learn to recognize fonts is fonts tend to have just sort of little giveaways or tells. Because of the idiosyncrasies in one or more characters. And Gaudi's idiosyncrasies are, it's a little bit hard to see it on screen, but a diamond-shaped punctuation mark, and also this very characteristic Y that doesn't loop down, but just sort of goes down and then abruptly stops. And Gaudi just seems to me, it has this sort of luxury, high-end feel, or at least did when it came out, that goes with the feel of this picture. And it supports that. Sometimes the picture and the type can work together a little bit more explicitly. This is my world. I didn't design this, but I am a magazine designer, and this is an opening for a magazine feature. It's a two-page feature, and here the intertube obviously becomes the O in the word shot, so the text and the image are kind of seamlessly together. And everyone in this class, not all my examples are two-page spreads, but everyone in this class will be designing a two-page spread for this, so they'll have plenty of room and they'll have space to stretch out with it and be working with a shape a little bit different than you are used to. Now, the one thing about two-page spreads is almost always each side is printed on a different page, and so sometimes they don't quite line up exactly right. And this is the intertube, you can see, is just not quite registering across the pages precisely. Now, for a big letter or a big picture like this, that's fine. I think that most readers would not even notice that that's broken. But if you are working with a two-page spread, unless it's in very rare instances, you have to be cognizant of the fold. So it's fine to take a giant letter like any of these in the term big shot across the fold, but type this small you probably would not put in the middle. Also, a human's face, if they got a little bit cockeyed because they didn't print in alignment and lost symmetry, and their face was not symmetrical, that also probably wouldn't be a great thing. So those would be the sort of things that you would avoid taking across the middle of your ad or your editorial spread. But but big type and images, the less important parts of images especially, can certainly go across that. You can also avoid that altogether. This is kind of a less overt, but kind of a neat interaction, the way the type is going both above and behind the picture. And yet we could still read it as adventure. Now, I'm going to share a couple of videos that I recorded for an earlier class. When I teach 180, when I get to InDesign, I always teach how to create these kinds of text and image interactions and a couple of others. And but not every teacher does that. I think this is kind of the fun part of InDesign. This and typography is where InDesign shines. But you can also have, an interplay of type and image this way, the way the dancers are between the two numbers, or the way this woman's foot comes out. And these are actually, they're a little bit time consuming, not too time consuming, but these are actually really easy things to create in InDesign and really the other programs, Photoshop and Illustrator as well. And this is another example of this, the way the fabric seems to interweave with the type. This looks very different. It's a very different sort of effect, but technically it is achieved exactly the same way that the last two were. This in that is the exact same suite of techniques to get those working across the pages. Now, for those of you who like the handwritten assignment, or the type by hand part of the first project, this could also be an opportunity to return to that. There are a lot of illustrators in particular who do lettering, and often if the same person is doing the lettering and the image, you can also control that way where the space for the type is. This has a nice empty space in it for type, and some images are more suited to putting type on top of than others. But you should be able to find good images or create images, and you can photograph your own if you want, or you could use something you found on one of the stock sites or the internet somewhere. But you can also draw it yourself and create it yourself, and that can be a way to create a connection between typography and image as well. If they come from the same hand, they're going to be visually connected. And you can also use whatever your product is to create the type. You can create the type in the real world. This is painted Nutella, but I have seen type done with all kinds of different sorts of food products or other things. It's possible to use type in that way as well and get a connection between your product or your photographic topic and your words. And it's kind of nice because we're not even mentioning the product here. It's just please do not lick the page, and then we see not even a separate logo, but just a little jar of Nutella, so we know what it's about. So everyone is doing a 2-page spread, so that's going to be 17 inches wide by 11 or thereabouts. Magazines are often not actually 17 by 11 or 8.5 by 11 when they're folded out. They're often a little bit smaller or a little bit bigger, but it's going to be about that size. And it could be a magazine advertisement. That is an advertisement that would appear in a magazine or a magazine feature opener. And these two are really the same sort of thing. Magazine opener is trying to get you to read an article, and a magazine ad is trying to get you to buy a product. But they're both, trying to, lure you in. So your goal is to get the type and image to work together to tell a unified story. So that means that the two are in harmony, the two are aesthetic, the type is readable, and significant parts of the image are unobscured. It's fine to put your type on top of a picture, but you don't want to cover the face of the movie star you're writing about. You want that person to be visible because that picture is also part of what is selling that content or that product to a consumer or a reader.